in the end of the day, I think the idea of engagement, and what I really appreciate of this session, the invitation from the scientists. It's really known that scientists, they like to keep everything closed in a circle within their environment, but opening up and listening to the community, I think that's really, really amazing that even the scientists, they start looking into opening up to the community, understanding, you know, does this data really make sense? That this, information makes sense? And I think reaching out to our region and talking to us, I would like, if possible, I propose that we continue these kind of sessions. I know I was talking to some of the leaders that, we're late because September is like couple of months from now, but maybe it's not late that for the next round, that please continue talking to the community, continue looking at. We have amazing, one of our experience, the last 2 years, we did a report. We called it communication of engagement, how SGBF engaged with United Nations. And then I've realized that we have volunteered 1,500 from ambassadors to youth, to women, to everybody. 1,500 recorded by name, by locations, by activity, by everything. So the volunteer, I mean, we have to really change our system of producing work. I mean, everybody goes to work, but really what you need is you need to volunteer 10% of your time, 20% of your time to the delegation of the SDGs performance. I've been able to, to survive as a foundation, as a nonprofit, non-governmental representative, because of the volunteers. It would never be possible. And so I really encourage everybody to look into volunteers as a tool, as a mechanism with the community, with the scientists, with the policymakers. I think would be a really fantastic world. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much. Just one sentence, and to finish with this, I think that in order to achieve true implementation of the SDGs, we should look at systemic changes. We should look at, changing the entire infrastructure, waste infrastructure of entire countries, and at a global level, not at local level only, okay? And that will take some time, inevitably.
Let me just have a brief comment, and then I will leave my chair to somebody else. It's related to the issue of plastic. Let us be clear about that, and it's very extremely important for this region. Yeah, I'm leaving. Because this is an oil-producing country. And the plastic, the single-use plastic, is just the visible part of the iceberg. It's nothing. And we have to keep this in mind. They are changing our approach on plastic by only focusing on that. I think everything you have here in this room should be made of oil and plastics and so on. And the clothes that we wear that is polyester and so on, that we are washing, it gives microplastic that goes to the sea. All these might be, I don't know exactly what it is, but it might be also made of oil and so on. So this part of the world is producing oil. So if we have to change the things, it's affecting the whole oil industry, that will have to change completely their process, how we are using it. It has to be reduced. I know that some countries are aware of that. But there will be a long transition period where each and every one of us has to be an actor. And please, plastic is not only single-use plastic. It's everywhere. And I use 3 words just for you, and I believe that you will remember that. It might remind you a movie. When I talk about plastic, I talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have very good plastic. Plastic was a miracle. We should not forget that. The medicine owes a lot to plastics. We have good plastic that we need to keep on working on that. And we have to thank the oil industry and continue with this. We have bad plastic. We know that we have to get rid of single-use plastic. But we have the ugly plastic, the one that is misused, that we can correct by upcycling, recycling, and make it better. The good, the bad, and the ugly for plastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, very inspiring discussion, actually, and thank you for raising very important points. My name is Ismat Zidan. I'm an associate professor of policy planning and development at College of Public Policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University, and I worked 7 years at Qatar University here and 2 years at the United Arab Emirates University. So I do have a kind of teaching and research experience in the Gulf, and I'll be talking mainly about the context of the Arab region. Like, in order to create an enabling environment for advancing the SDGs and overcoming the challenges of the SDGs, there are two dynamic actors that we need to look at and focus on, especially for governments and policymakers. The first one is the role of the higher education institutions, especially public universities, as we are the knowledge consumption and production centers. We can go in our beyond the traditional dimensions of the universities, which is focusing only on research and teaching, to a third dimension, which is more integration with the achieving the, let's say, the national strategic goals of the government. Especially, I know very well in the Gulf that, for example, the Qatari government, they look at the higher education institutions as having a leading role, actually, in achieving the national strategic goals. They spend millions of dollars in creating education hub in this country in order to lead the knowledge economy and in order to advance or to lead or change or help the society to better align with the global sustainability agenda. So the role of universities as a catalyst for change, a catalyst for advancing the SDGs is very important. And I think they should be not overlooked in the Arab region. Now, the other dimension, like we can start, for example, simple, there are successful initiatives even in the Arab universities in the Arab region, which is like, we can start by balancing our scientific foundation and technology tools in order to start transferring our campuses into smart communities. And there are successful examples of this in Tunisia and in other Arab countries. The other important, let's say, very important factor or actor in achieving the sustainable development goals, which is the society. Again, from our research, like governments should establish comprehensive understanding of the society, simply because society is at the core of this SDGs, especially when we talk about energy and transition to zero carbon communities. So we need, governments need to understand the driving forces of the society, the constraints of the society, and make the society, understanding the society will help us make them accelerate the implementation of the SDGs instead of overlooking them and make them an obstacle, turn them into an obstacle in achieving or advancing in the SDGs. So it's very important to start with the society. That's the most important factor. Going back to the energy domain, like energy subsidies in the region and very low price of energy, especially in the oil exporting countries, will never lead actually to energy efficiency, would always lead to wasteful energy consumption. Like, if I give you example from the Qatari context, like they published these numbers actually, like the Qatari government has spent $46,000 in the last years just for energy per capita. This number is per capita. So just for energy subsidy. And if you consider this number, it's about $4,600 per capita a year. And that's about 1,500 riyal per month. If a household of 6 people, then this means it's costing the government like 9,000 riyal a month just for our energy subsidy. So in this case, when we talk about energy subsidy, in the Arab context, let's focus on the MENA region, like it costs the governments like $500 million. And that's actually more than the bilateral assistance that go from the ODA to this region. So energy subsidy has been proven also by research. It's not helping the poor, because the poor actually, if we think about it, they have very either no access or limited access to energy. And when you think about the wealthiest households, it's the ones who are making benefit actually of energy subsidy. And go back to my colleague here who was talking about the green buildings. Like, we will never achieve the desirable performance of buildings if we focus only on technology and technological driven factors, and which all the governments, unfortunately, in the GCC are obsessed with. Technology is not the only solution. If we do not supplement the technological solutions with the human-driven solutions by understanding the communities and the people, then who will, at the end, the end user of these technologies, we will never reach sustainable and long-term solutions, and we will never be there in terms of SDG 7, for example. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sylvie Malouf. I'm a program manager within Qatar Foundation CEO office. I mostly work on policy and support just more the policy angle of things, looking at our Qatar Foundation ecosystem and how we can bring everything together into national policy. I appreciate a lot the discussion and all the points that have been mentioned. One thing that keeps coming to my mind, though, is when you think about the SDGs and the implementation of it, is the governance mechanisms, right? We have heard a lot about the UN and what has been working well, what hasn't been working well, and as long as we continue to do it as a self-reporting national level, it's not going to be enough. You have, cyclical governments, you have national priorities, and you have a specific focus, and then, governments change, things happen. I mean, look with the war in Russia, what's happening and how that's jeopardized a lot of our SDGs. There's a key actor involved, and we've talked about civil society, but private sector can really push the needle. We need financing for many of these things, and we need to be able to tap into some of that financing to push more towards innovation of, and there's been talk about like an international tax, and you mentioned the tax, like the sin taxes, but what about the tax on the producers? So there's this thing that was been tried with taxing sugar content in the UK, I believe, which has actually led to the private sector reformulating some of their products, because sometimes the consumer wants to change, but they don't have the knowledge or the ability to change, or we don't have the options. So you can ban plastics. What's my option? How do we enable the ecosystem to create the option? And this is where the systems approach becomes wildly important. We talked about waste management. I would love to recycle everything I do, but it takes a lot of personal effort within Qatar's current systems right now for me to do so. Therefore, I dump a couple of plastic bottles because I know Elite Recycling will take them, but I also know that a lot of it will not end up being recycled because the infrastructure is not yet in place. So we need to look at it from multiple approaches. Yes, there's the awareness component, but how are we ensuring that we're also promoting the production that matches it? And our colleagues talked about that very well. And the last point is when it comes to the climate change, it's interesting because COP is one of those things that, hasn't really been working. And